Okay, by popular demand, we're gonna do a posing tutorial. This is for those who compete in the WNBF Federation in the bikini category. In hindsight, I should have done this when I was a little bit leaner, and as well too, when it was not in the middle of November. Even though we have a heater in the garage, it is friggin' cold in here, hence the ginormous Natty Hour hoodie that we're gonna have to take off so I can show you guys how to pose properly. But this has been a highly requested video, obviously not my normal content, but it is health and fitness related, and I am a WNBF bikini pro, where, you know what, let's go ahead and do a posing tutorial. Just kidding, my shoes on here, and I'm gonna talk a little bit here before we actually get into the tutorial. Oh man, this may not go that well. For today's tutorial, we are gonna go over the requirements for each pose. You have your front pose, your side pose, back pose, and then your second side pose. We'll go over some of the requirements during the comparison round, and then I'm gonna go over the box walk. This is the presentation round. Depending on the show that you're competing at, some promoters will do a T-walk, but for the majority of the competitions here in Canada, all of the promoters, myself included, for the Kelowna Naturals on June 1st, 2024, it is gonna be a box walk. So we'll go over that as well. So I haven't done posing for a very long time here, so bear with me. We're just going over the basics today. All right. So when you're lined up on the line with all of the athletes, you're gonna come out on stage, you're gonna hit your front pose. So with the front pose, what the judges want to see is both hips and both shoulders and both feet pointing forward. So you don't want your feet pointing to the side like this, and you don't want your hip to dip too far where you can't see your hip. You can twist your hip ever so slightly, maybe work with a posing coach directly to help optimize your angles. But what we're trying to do is create an X shape here. So for myself, I typically lean over to the right and I have my right hand on my hip. You can go to the left and have your left hand on your hip. Doesn't matter. I would kind of go back and forth to see what feels more comfortable for you, but it just depends. So you're gonna be holding this pose quite a bit, so whatever feels a little bit more comfortable for you, where you're okay just placing all of that weight on the one foot. That's what you wanna focus on when you're trying to decide what is your more dominant side. So for me, it is my right hip. I typically will have my other leg just kind of dragging a little bit, and I'll twist my hips ever so slightly, but you can still see both of my hips. And then my hand on my hip, typically it's gonna be in line with my belly button, and then we're gonna square our shoulders forward. So that's how your front pose is gonna look. You don't want your lats flared or anything like that. We aren't figure competitors, but you do want your shoulders popping ever so slightly. And then my hand will be relaxing here, where I will have like my thumb touching against my index finger and my thumb pointing forward towards the judges. So I don't have my hand forward like that, and no teacupping like this. A lot of girls will go like this. I would make sure that you have your thumb facing towards the judges. So that's how a front pose is gonna look. When you're holding your front pose, it's okay to move around ever so slightly. Maybe move your hair off your shoulder. Maybe just try to adjust to get into position if you find that you're losing stability or alignment, but don't move too much. A lot of times nerves take over, and a lot of girls will keep like twisting their arm like this, and they're trying to get the attention of the judges. This is distracting. Just find your pose, hold it. If you need to adjust, that's totally okay. Then we're gonna transition to our side pose. Remember, we are always quarter turning to the right, always. Quarter turn to the right, quarter turn to the right. You're gonna get very dizzy when you're gonna do this multiple times. So when you're in your side pose, you're in your front pose, we're gonna quarter turn to the right. And when you're in your comparison rounds, just get there. A lot of girls will put a lot of flair on their turns, and the judges, they'll try to wait for you, but if you don't get into your pose and everybody else is in their pose, they're gonna tell you to quarter turn to the right before they can even compare you. So while it's okay to add flair and personality to your transitions, I would save that for the box walk. So when you're in your front pose, you wanna transition your weight, right? So the weight's all on this leg. So typically I'm gonna bring my leg together, maybe step forward, and then slowly twist into your side pose. So with the side pose, we want our hips facing the side, we want our feet facing the side, but we want our shoulders facing the judges. So it's gonna hurt, it's gonna feel very uncomfortable. Rule of thumb typically is the more uncomfortable it feels, the more likely you're doing it right. So when you're in your side pose, you can have your front leg bent, or you can have your back leg bent. So play with both of them. Like as you can see, I'm already off balance here, where I like my front leg bent more. It's more comfortable for me and I'm able to hold it a lot longer. So you can bend your back leg and, you can keep your back leg straight and then bend your front leg, or you can do it the opposite. So play with both of them. See what you like. When you figure out which leg is gonna be bent and which leg is gonna be straight, you wanna try to arch your back, but you don't wanna arch it too much like this. Making sure your chest stays upright. Still want to have full alignment here and have your chest nice and high. So a nice arch in the back, keep your tummy nice and tight, and you're gonna have your back, the back of your hand, so this is your right hand, on your hip, so same thing where it's in line with your stomach, and then you're gonna twist where you guys can see both of my shoulders while keeping my hips and feet facing that way. And this is gonna hurt quite a bit. If you can't see your elbow with your peripheral, you're not twisting enough. So you should be able, if you look to the side, see your elbow. Keeping your chest nice and high and making sure that your shoulders, both of them are, you can see both of your shoulders and that they are in line. Sometimes you'll see girls go like this or like this. Make sure your chest is nice and high and your shoulders are in line. Hand, same thing with your thumb facing forward, and you don't want it to hide your glutes. So don't have your hand right there or you can't see the booty a little bit, like it's more in front of me, but it's also to the side. You don't want it too far away or anything like that because you might hit the girl next to you there. So just a little bit past your booty, but make sure you're not covering your booty. After you've hit your first side pose, we're gonna go into our back pose here. So for the back pose, same thing. We wanna try to get there when we're in our comparison rounds. So we're gonna transition our weight, where my weight's on my front leg right now. So I'm gonna transition to my back leg. So I'm just gonna shift and pivot, kind of point my toe forward, and now my front leg is bent, and then we're gonna slowly turn around. With our back pose, we want to have shoulder width distance with our feet. Depending on your alignment and depending on your musculature, you can point your toes out ever so slightly. That's gonna help pop your quads. If you have pretty dominant quads where you don't need them to pop, you can point your toes facing forward. So my quads aren't all that dominant, so I like to point my toes out a little bit, but my feet are in line with my shoulders. And then we're gonna arch our back, very similar to how we were doing it on the side pose. And we're going to place our hands on our hips and try to open up our lats. Make sure you move your hair as well too, if it's long enough, and that way you can show off your back. So when you're in your back pose, you want to ensure that you're up nice and tall. And something to remember is the judges are going to be looking down. So you actually want to have your neck, like your chin tilted up quite significantly. I'll show you from the side. So when you're in the side like this, making sure you're nice and tall, you have an arch in your back, hands on your hips, and I wouldn't stand straight up like this. See how my head's neutral? It's gonna look like you're bending forward because of the judges viewing you downward. Instead, when you're in your back pose like this, tilt your head up like this. And that's gonna make it look like you're actually standing straight up. You can have as big of an arch as you comfortably can, but you don't want to be bending forward. So no sticking your booty out like this or anything like that. They don't want to see that. They don't want you to be like arching crazy like this, but making sure you're nice and upright. A little bit of an arch there to show off your glute hamstring tie-in and keeping your chin up to make it look like you're standing straight up. So when you're in your back pose, paying attention to your back, the judges don't want you to pinch your shoulder blades together like this or anything like that. Open up your back. That's what they want you to do. So you don't want to flare them or anything like that, like you're a figure competitor, but you still want to have your back pretty wide as much as you can. So that's going to be our back pose. Now we're going to transition into our side pose. So our second side pose here, there's a few ways that you can do it. Try to get there, again, as quickly as possible, as minimal steps as possible. What I like to do is I will take my right leg and I'll step it back like this. Have a little bit of a T, so my foot is facing that way, but my other foot's facing that way. And I'm gonna go back like this. And then I'm gonna bring my feet facing that way. And then we're gonna transition into our second side pose. So if like on the first side pose, you like to have your front leg bent, but for whatever reason, your second side pose, it's more comfortable for you to have your front leg, your first side pose, say it's more comfortable for you to have your front leg straight, but your second side pose is more comfortable for you to have it bent. You can go back and forth, it doesn't matter. I like to have, for both of my side poses, my front leg straight. So again, we're gonna keep our front leg nice and straight, toes facing that way, hips facing that way, hand on hip, and we're gonna have an arch in our back, keep our chest nice and high, and twist where you can see both of my shoulders. Again, making sure that you can see your elbow with your peripherals, your hand isn't covering your glutes. And that's our second side pose. And then from there, we're gonna transition back to our front pose. So you can keep it nice and simple here where you just simply get back into position. I tend to do a bit of a transition where I bring both hands to my thighs, keeping your hands nice and flat. Don't do anything crazy like this. Hands nice and flat and relaxed on your thighs, and then take a step and pivot this way, and then back into my front pose. Those are the quarter turns, front side, back side. Be able to do that frequently. You're probably gonna do like maybe 5 to 7 comparisons where you are twisting and getting into your side, your every single quarter turn multiple times. So being able to do that without even thinking about it, holding those poses, those are the biggest things that you want to focus on when it comes to your comparisons, your quarter turns. So you can see I'm adding a little bit of flair, a little bit of cuteness, a little personality, but I'm able to get into my poses pretty quickly. Now you're not gonna move that fast on stage. I would suggest like maybe around about a 2 to 3 second count to transition into your poses. So you don't wanna go too fast, because if you're moving too fast, things jiggle. You don't want things to jiggle, right? So being nice and slow, taking your time, but still getting there as relatively quickly as possible, so that way the judges have time to compare you when you're actually in your poses. That's gonna matter too, right? So if you're doing too many transitions or you're adding too much flair, you know, that's what we want to try to avoid. The judges are looking at your physique when they're doing the quarter turns, and they're comparing you to the other girls. So making sure that you're setting yourself up to get into the proper position, that's way more important than doing things like this and then flipping your hair back and then like going like this and then eventually getting into that quarter turn. You can do that during your box walk, but during the quarter turns, just get to the pose. After you have done your quarter turns, typically the judges are gonna get you to do the model walk. And this is only for the bikini class. And then after the model walk, the judges are gonna get you to line up at the back of the stage where you will perform your box walk. After the box walk, the judges will have you exit the stage, and then depending on the format of the show, typically they will call back out top 5, or they will continue on through the remainder of the bikini classes, and then they will do the award portion of the show. Once the judges are done with the comparison round, they're gonna have you line up at the front of the stage and then have you perform the model walk. With the model walk, this is where you're gonna turn to the back, hold your back pose, and then the judge is gonna tell you to walk to the back of the stage, and you wanna walk nice and slow. We don't want anything jiggling. They want to see your tone and definition and confidence of your overall physique and presentation. So it's really important to pay attention to what the head judge is telling you, because sometimes they will tell you to walk back to the front as soon as you get back to the stage. Sometimes they'll tell you to quarter turn to the right. Sometimes they'll tell you to hit a front pose, hold that front pose, and then they will give you the command to walk to the front of the stage. So really listening to what the head judge is telling you is very important. So you'll be in your front pose. You're going to have the judge tell you what to do. Typically, they're going to say, turn to the back. So you want to have a transition from your front pose to your back pose. So you'll be in your front pose, and they'll be like, all right, ladies, turn to the back. So I typically will bring this leg together, step forward, do a cute little pause like that, start to move my hair, and then hit my back pose. You're going to hold your back pose until the judge tells you what to do. And this is when they feel you're ready, they'll be like, all right, ladies, walk to the back. So you can start walking right away. Good rule of thumb is to try to be the last one there. So take your time. This is typically where I'll take a step together like this to prepare myself, and then slowly walk to the back. Once you get there, you will hit your back pose and wait for the judge to tell you what to do. So they may tell you, all right, ladies, turn to the front. So this is where you can take your time, turn to the front, and get into your front pose. Then they may tell you, all right, ladies, walk to the front. When you walk back to the front, you still want to kind of take your time, but it wouldn't be the last one there. So this is where a lot of your personality and confidence is going to come into play, is that runway back to the front. So when they say walk to the front, again, I'll typically do that and come all the way back to the front and then hit your front pose. Another example is, again, they will tell you, all right, ladies, turn to the back. So we'll turn to the back, hit our back pose, move our hair, head up nice and high, wait for command. They'll be like, all right, ladies, walk to the back. This is where we're going to take our time and really walk to the back, staying nice and high, head nice and tall. When we get to the line, hit our back pose. Now, another example is when you are in this back pose, the judge may tell you, all right, ladies, come back to the front. This is probably the most challenging one. So really focus on playing with the transition here. If you're in your back pose and they're like, all right, ladies, walk back to the front. Still take your time. We're going to transition like this, or you can transition however you want. I'm trying to remember what my transition is. I typically will turn the other way. So normally it's quarter turn to the right, but if you're just like transitioning the way that you want to, you can play with it the opposite way. So I'll typically, yeah, that's what I do. It's been a while. I'll show you guys that again. So they'll be like, all right, turn to the back, move your hair, hold your back pose, head nice and tall. All right, ladies, walk to the back. Slow, take your time, walking to the back. Once you get to the line, hit your back pose. Another example is, all right, ladies, walk to the front. So I take a step forward, I pivot, move my hair, and then walk back to the front. Once you get to the line, hit your front pose. At that point in time, after they have done your model walk, they will line you back up at the back of the stage in your numerical order. That's pretty typical. Again, always listen to the head judge. So if I'm number 1, but I'm like in the middle and I was supposed to be over there, I might be called first. So just listen to the judge. Once they're done the model walks, they'll be like, all right, ladies, we're going to line you to the back of the line. So number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, you're going to get into the back of the line. When you go to do the box walk, this is when they will tell you, all right, ladies, we're going to do the presentation round now. We're going to do your box walk. When you do the box walk, the MC is going to read out your name. He may read out a bio if you submitted one, but you have no commands. With the box walk, I would take your time. A lot of people rush it. Don't rush it, take your time. But basically, you're doing all of your turns in a certain spot. So you'll be back of the line where this is the corner of the stage. So I would be the first person to go if I'm in the right top hand corner here. and they'll tell me to go when it's my time to go. Holding your front pose, and you're gonna, when you're called upon, ready to do your box walk, we're gonna walk forward to the first X and hit our side pose. We're gonna hit a side pose where the judges are basically right here. So you always wanna be facing towards the judges. So keep that in mind if you're confused with which side pose to do. So we're in our front pose. Be like, all right, number one, krystenjanzen. So we're gonna slowly start to walk to the first X. Make sure you guys can see me. When we get there, you're gonna come in and hit your first side pose. Hold that for like maybe 3 to 5 seconds. Take your time, there's no rush. And then you're gonna go to the corner X. So I transition out, kind of cute like that. Slowly walk over. We are gonna hit a front pose, hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, front to back. So we're gonna transition and hit a back pose. And you can add your own flair, but these are just the basics here. So we're gonna hit our back pose, and then we're gonna transition to go to the final corner. So I'll typically do something like that, something cute like that, whatever you want, doesn't matter. And then we're gonna walk and go to that final corner. And then with this one, it's a little tricky because again, remember the judges are facing there. So we have to kind of twist and come in like this to hit our second side pose. Hold that for a good 3 to 5 seconds, and then you are done. You're gonna kind of, transition out, maybe wave goodbye, and you're gonna walk to the back of the line back here, and the girls are gonna pivot over. So to make room for me, I'm gonna come down, and the girls are gonna shuffle over, and when you get to the back of the line, you're gonna hit your front pose. And then you're just gonna hold it the entire time. You're in the back of the line while the rest of the girls are doing their box walk, the same thing. When the other girl's done, you're gonna smile, move down to the side, and shuffle down. Even though you're in the back line and the other girls are going, you're still being watched. So don't relax or anything like this. You can hit different side poses if you want and be a little bit more relaxed, but still have a strong presentation when you're in the back of the line. We're gonna shuffle down, big smiles, and hold your poses while you're in the back of the line and the other girls are doing their box walk. So that's a heavy duty tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful. Feel free to reach out to me. I do virtual posing sessions. So if anybody needs any assistance with WNBF bikini posing, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need any help, or if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below. But hopefully this is helpful. And practice. When you are competing in the sport of bodybuilding, lifting weights and the nutrition and the discipline and the motivation, that shit is easy. Posing is not. And you don't want to be one of those girls or guys up on stage where it doesn't look like you have practiced. Take the time to practice, and I promise you, if you put in that work and effort, you're going to shine on stage.